Hey guys, Dr. Justin Marcagiani here. Today we're going to be talking about sweet cravings. If you're having sweet cravings, what does that tell you about your brain and your neurotransmitters? Also, this could also be a sign of other things that could be spelling out from brain fog to anxiety to depression. We're going to dive into the root cause of what's happening here. Before we do, please smash that like button. Love to see your comments down below. All right, so in our brain, we have two big neurotransmitters. We have serotonin and we have dopamine. I'll pull up kind of a flow chart so you can see how this looks. These are our two major neurotransmitters. We also have other ones like glutamate, which can be very excitatory, common with OCD and ruminant thinking. Things like GABA can actually squash that glutamate. Things like theanine and GAD64 can convert that glutamate into GABA, which can be relaxing. And then, of course, from serotonin comes melatonin, a sleep hormone. So you have sleep hormone as well as a feel-good neurotransmitter. And then also dopamine can get converted into a catecholamine, epinephrine, norepinephrine. So these are all other important cofactors. Let me break it down for you guys a little more. So big neurotransmitters are going to be tyrosine. One step up from this is going to be phenylalanine. So phenylalanine to tyrosine, L-dopa to dopamine. And if we extended this down a little bit, you would see norepinephrine, epinephrine. And then on this side, we see tryptophan, go into 5-HTP, go into serotonin, and one step down from here would be melatonin. So a little bit deeper in this whole thing. Also, with some of these neurotransmitters, you do need sulfur as a cofactor. Sulfur is really important. And also B6 is a very, very important cofactor. And also methylation, folate, B12 are going to be other important nutrients that need to be here as well. Also, this is how your pre and postsynaptic neuron looks. So this is your pre. This is the neuron that comes before the post. And then you have the in between. This is the synaptic cleft or the synapse. This is where the neurotransmitters hang out. So think of the neurotransmitters as the chemical bridge from the pre to the postsynaptic neuron. You can see these neurotransmitters here in the middle, the little red circles. They bind to a receptor site to have their neurological effect, benefits on mood, benefits on brain function, and then you have these little reuptake ports on the side here. So this is where SSRI medications would block this. So instead of these neurotransmitters coming back and going back into the synaptic vesicle, right, where they're housed and then released, they hang out between the pre and postsynaptic neuron, the synaptic cleft, longer. And the longer they hang out here, the faster they get recycled. So think about it, they go back to their home where they're safe, in between the pre and postsynaptic neurons where they get broken down faster. That's why almost anyone who has been on SSRI medications long term, what tends to happen if you're not making any diet or lifestyle changes, the dose has to go up over time to maintain the symptomatic relief that it was helping or causing in the beginning. So that's why we want to actually get to the root underlying cause of what's happening, not just, block reuptake ports, which could have side effects, right? So this is what's happening, though, at a neurological level. And so when we see sweet cravings, one of the first things that we can see as the first domino to fall is we have stress. So it could be emotional stress. It could be physical stress. You're exercising too hard. Maybe you're too sedentary. It could be, I mentioned emotional. It could be chemical or hidden inflammatory stressors. These could be things like you're eating gluten. You have bacterial imbalances in your gut. You have some nutrient deficiencies. You have SIBO. You have low bacterial levels. Maybe you have mold toxicity. Maybe you have high insulin or dysglycemia. Your blood sugar is bouncing around. All these things can create stress and inflammation. And then if you add poor sleep does start to create prediabetes. You can get a blood sugar meter. If you go 3-4 hours, of sleep that night or even less, you'll notice your blood sugar bounces around, partly because cortisol creates a mobilization of that glucose throughout the day, and that will cause more insulin. So they've done studies on this with college kids, restricted sleep for a week or two, and they saw they were basically in a pre-diabetic state within a week or two. So sleep's really important. And of course, when you have high levels of cortisol because of stress, whether it's physical, chemical, or emotional, you will mobilize glucose because that stress response always, from an evolutionary standpoint, meant you needed glucose. Blood went to the arms and hands and feet to run, fight, or flee. Now we're in situations where we're mobilizing all this glucose, but we're not physically fighting. But we still have this glucose. What do you do? So from a stress response standpoint, you just mobilize, let's say, a half a glucose bar, but you're not actually needing the energy to fight and flee. So that's the problem we have. That's why stress can cause problems. And again, when you create lots of cortisol or you get a big high bolus of sugar in, you bump up your insulin, this serotonin and dopamine, they flood across the neurotransmitters, right? they flood across the neurotransmitters. And then what happens is over time, then the levels drop. So it doesn't quite drop right away. It actually, you get a bump, you get an increase. It's like whipping a tired horse. Whip a tired horse, they may go faster, but then over time, what happens? Now you get the drop. So the drop comes after. And then, of course, then the mood goes down with it. And then your brain seeks out more dopamine boosts. This is where you reach out for more sweets, more recreational drugs, more alcohol, more smoking. And then again, this is where the cycle repeats. Then you eat more sugar, and then we get this blood sugar roller coaster happening. So that's the typical thing that I see with patients. Now, when you deal with that, what do you need to do? So first off, you have to look at where is the behavior in that cycle creating the vicious cycle. Is it the sweets? Where's the inflammation coming from? So if it's sleep or sweets or just inflammation in your diet or in your environment, you have to get in there and get to the root of that. So maybe it's eating protein and fat at each meal. Maybe it's getting a blood sugar meter and testing how your blood sugar fluctuates, before 1-2 hour afterwards, making sure we never go above 120 and we're back below 100 within 2 hours. Maybe it's walking 10,000 steps. Maybe it's getting to bed before 10, 11 o'clock, getting 8 hours. Maybe we're adding some extra magnesium in our diet before bed. Maybe we're on top of getting extra selenium too. Maybe we're taking some hydrochloric acid and enzymes so we can digest our protein better. Maybe we're doing an adrenal test and looking at that cortisol rhythm and trying to get our cortisol more balanced, or trying to get our gut looked at and try to get maybe the H. pylori or gut infection resolved. We want to look at and kind of take inventory of all the stress things. Now, if our neurotransmitters are off, we're going to have sweet cravings. It's going to be hard to focus. We're going to be anxious. We're going to be jittery. And we may even be, OCD, more compulsive, just because we have that high levels of glutamate in our brain. We can use neurotransmitters. We can use amino acids like 5-HTP, like tyrosine, like phenylalanine, or DL-phenylalanine, or maybe also B6 and the methylating cofactors, calcium, vitamin C. We may also want a good multi in the background. We also want to eat according to the raw material in our brain. Our brain is 60 to 70% fat and cholesterol. So we want to make sure we're consuming healthy fat and cholesterol. We want to make sure we're not getting a bunch of pesticides and glyphosate and mold from our environment that could be negatively impacting our gut. So if we have chronic stress, we can take our dopamine that's important for focus and that I love you feeling, and we can convert it downstream into adrenaline. Not good. Women have the same thing with progesterone. If we have good progesterone levels, we can convert it downstream to cortisol. Same thing. So women have the same thing that happens with dopamine to adrenaline. They have it with progesterone to cortisol, and that creates estrogen dominance. That's the start of estrogen dominance. We have the ratio dropping, and then we have the xenoestrogens coming in, and that further perpetuates these estrogen dominant symptoms. Breast tenderness, cramping, lots of PMS stuff, mood, irritability, etc. So we want to get to the root issue. First thing is get your blood sugar dialed in, good proteins and fats. Get the nutrients dialed in. I talked about some of the foundational things that we can do. B6, B12, folate, good omega-3. We talked about some of the amino acids that are core. Talked about getting good hydrochloric acid and enzymes at each meal. Getting your glycemia under control, right? Making sure good proteins and fat. That's the log on the fire that keeps that fire burning strong. If you're just feeding the fire paper or twigs, the fire goes up and down, up and down. A log keeps that fire burning longer and stronger. So this just kind of gives you a little insight of what I see on a week in, week out basis with patients that have mood issues, have cravings. And when you have cravings, you almost always have irritability, anxiety, depression along with it, or it's part of something in the background. It's very possible. I see it quite frequently. So if you want more support on this, again, we'll do testing like organic acids. We'll look at the gut. We'll test everything to really get a complete picture of where the root issue is. If you want more info on that, there'll be a link down below where you can reach out to my staff and team if you want to reach out and schedule. Again, this is Dr. J here signing off. If you enjoyed it, please let me know. Give me a thumbs up and let me know in the comments. Info below. Take care, guys. Bye now.